Alright, so what we're going to be doing today is reviewing solving multi-step equations with distribution. So when doing these problems, the first thing you're going to do is distribute. So anytime you see parentheses, you're going to multiply the number on the outside with everything inside. The second step is to combine like terms on the same side of the equal. Step 3, get the variable to one side. Step 4, add or subtract depending on what you have in your problem. And step 5, multiply or divide. So for our first example, we have negative 5 times 7m plus 2 equals 4 times negative 3 minus 2m. So the first step, just like it says, is to distribute. So the first thing we're going to do is distribute this negative 5 to both the 7m and the 2, which makes negative 35m minus 10. Yeah, so they're both negative because we have positive times a negative, and that makes a negative. And this equals, now we have to do the same thing on the other side, distribute this 4 to both terms. So we're going to get negative 12 minus 8m. Okay, so that's step 1. We got rid of the parentheses, so we can move on to step 2. But if you look at step 2, it says combine like terms on the same side of the equal. So if we look over here on the left, these aren't like terms. Okay, this has an m, this doesn't, so we can't combine them. And looking at the right, it's the same thing. Here's an m, this one doesn't. So we can't do step 2, so we move on to step 3, which is get the variable to one side. So it's your choice, you can get the variable on the left or the right, but I'm going to move it to the left. And to do this, I will have to add m because I want to do the opposite. And in this problem, that's a minus, so opposite is a plus. So I only add it to the other m, not to the 10 or the 12. So when we do this, negative 35m plus 8m is a negative 27m. And then we still have minus 10 equals negative 12. Okay, so that was step 3. Step 4 is we either want to add or subtract. So we want to get m by itself. So what we're going to be either adding or subtracting is this 10 here. So again, we always want to do the opposite. So the opposite of a minus is plus. So we add 10 to itself and to the other side of the equal sign. Okay. So this will give us a negative 27m equals negative 12 plus 10 is negative 2. Okay, and our last step is either to multiply or divide. So in this problem, we have negative 27 times n. So the opposite would be to divide. So we have to divide both sides by negative 27. And that, it looks horrible, but that's a negative 27 on both sides. Okay, but 27 can't go into 2. We can't even reduce the fraction. All we can do is get rid of the negatives because a negative divided by a negative is a positive. So our answer is m equals 2 over 27. Okay. And it's okay to have a fraction. Most of your problems today will have fractions on them. Alright, so here is a second problem that we can do for extra practice. So again, first step is always to distribute. So we're going to distribute this 2 with the 1 and the negative 6x. So we will get 5 equals 2 minus 12x. And we still have to subtract 4x. Okay, so we're done distributing. Next step is to combine like terms on both sides, which in this problem we actually have. The negative 12x minus 4x, those can be combined. So since they're both negative, we can actually add them. So if you remember adding the opposite, okay, if we write it off to the side, we have negative 12 minus 4. And if we add the opposite, we keep this, change that, and this. So that makes a negative 16. So we have a negative 16x when we combine those like terms. Okay, so putting this with the rest of the problem, we have 5 equals 2 minus 16x. Okay, so next step, get the variable to one side. Well, it's already on the right, there's no other x's on the left, so we can go ahead and keep that there. And now step 4, we have to either add or subtract. So that means we have to get this number by itself over to the other side because we're still working on getting x alone. So there's no sign in front of the 2, which that means it's already a plus. So to get rid of it, or do the opposite, we're going to subtract 2 from both sides of the equal sign. Okay, so when we subtract 2, we're going to get 3 equals a negative 16x. Okay. And our last step is always to either multiply or divide. And in this case, when there's a variable attached to the front of x, we're going to be, or a number attached to the front of x, we're going to be dividing by that number. So dividing by that number gives us this answer here, and we can't reduce it, so x equals negative 3 over 16. Alright, so another topic we need to talk about today is multi-step inequalities, which inequalities are the problems with these symbols. So in this case, this is a greater than symbol. A symbol going in the other direction would be a less than symbol. So the steps you follow to solve these problems is exactly like the steps for solving equations. So you would start out by distributing if you have any parentheses. You would combine like terms if you can. You would try to get the variable to one side, add and subtract, and then multiply or divide. And with the multiplying or dividing, the main thing you have to remember that's different from equations is that if you multiply or divide by a negative on both sides, you have to flip the symbol. So let's see what happens to this problem and if we're going to have to flip the symbol. So first step is to distribute, which we don't have to do. We don't have to combine like terms because these aren't like terms. This doesn't have an x and the 3 doesn't have an x, so those aren't like terms. So what we need to do first is get the variable to one side. And what I would suggest is always to get the variable to the left. All answers on your final are going to have the variable on the left, so you might as well just practice doing that now. So To do that, we're going to subtract 8x from both sides. So we subtract it from the 2x. Okay, so 2x minus 8x, we're subtracting a big number, so it's a negative 6x plus 3 is greater than 4. Okay, so from here, we would either add or subtract. So in this case, since this is what we want to move and it's adding, we want to subtract. So we always do the opposite. Okay, so this gives us negative 6x is greater than 4 minus 3 is 1. Okay, so last step is multiply or divide. We are dividing by the number attached to x. So we're dividing both sides by a negative 6. So since we are dividing by this negative 6 here on both sides, that is when we're going to flip the symbol. So it's no longer a greater than symbol, it is now a less than symbol. So we have x is less than. Okay, 6 can't go into 1, so it has to stay as a fraction. So it's negative 1/6. Okay, and we don't have to worry about graphing these, so we're just going to keep that there.